Megyn, why is the liberal media, where you are, trying to link the life of Queen Elizabeth II with seemingly every ill of the British Empire, when actually the late Queen was the woman who transformed the British Empire into the Commonwealth? It doesn't make sense to me.
It's envy, it's identity politics, and it's ignorance. You know, they're complaining in particular about this diamond in the Queen's crown, and it's part of the crown jewels, and it has been for a long time now, since the mid-1800s when the British Empire got it from India. And they're saying that must go back. It was the product of plunder. Well, I took a little look just to see. Was it the product of plunder? Well, it turns out that there was a man named Lord Dalhousie, a Scottish statesman and governor general in India, who allegedly coerced the Indian leader into gifting it to Queen Victoria. Now, the kid was only 11 years old, so perhaps there was coercion. How do we know he coerced it? Well, he wrote it, the Lord did, in a letter bragging about how he got it for Queen Victoria. Well, do we know whether he in fact coerced it, or do we think he might have just been boasting about his overly important? We have no idea, because it happened 150 plus years ago. Right? So let's go back a little further. Did India come by the diamond? Honestly, I don't know. A simple Google search told me that it used to belong first to the Iranians, and then their Shah was murdered, and suddenly it showed up in Afghanistan, and then their king was murdered, and suddenly it showed up in India. So how many generations do we need to go back and do right by when we figure out where this diamond must eventually rest? Who among its prior holders has absolutely clean hands? You see, it's really hard to tell, Dan, because it happened hundreds of years ago, and none of us knows the true lineage or how one thing wound up precisely going from one person to the other. Right now, when it was in the hands of India, this particular area actually used to be Pakistan. So Pakistan's saying that they have a right to it. This is the problem when you try to do this weird revisionist history demanding reparations and to return things to their natural state, 200 years ago? Or should we do 300 years ago? Who's that going to upset? We're wrestling with this right here in our own country now, where people like Sonny Hostin want reparations for American African Americans as well, even though there's no way of tracing virtually every single white person. Where did we come from? Did we come from slave owners, or people like me who are Irish who had nothing to do with the slave trade? Or black people, did they descend from slaves or didn't they? Are they immigrants who came well after the slave trade was over? We have no idea. Now, when you do it the other way around, when you come out as the biographer of record for, let's say, Martin Luther King, and you won awards for your reporting on him, and you get one of the biggest leaks of the century, and you find out that MLK was actually present for a massive, disturbing sexual abuse of one of his female congregants, and not only did not stand up to stop it, but seemed to be totally fine with it, that you cannot cancel MLK, and you cannot talk about him. And on MLK Day, it's not important to remember the full legacy of the man, because that's what's honest. No, that gets swept under the rug by people like Sonny Hostin. But when it's Queen Elizabeth, who has the wrong, skin color, the wrong history, because she's British, it's fair game. And whether you're a university professor or a moronic television host on the stupidest show on TV, The View, you can get away with it as long as the target doesn't check certain boxes.
Very well put, Megyn. Very well put. The other one that really surprised me, was Christiane Amanpour from CNN. Now, she's a CBE, Megyn. So here she is talking about the need for reparations and the fact that our British Empire was such a terrible thing. She's a CBE. Do you know what that stands for, Megyn? A commander of the Order of the British Empire. Didn't seem to have any problem accepting that little gong, did she?
Of course not, right? She is one of the worst offenders, and Sonny Hostin the same. These are two people who see race as the prism through which they want to view everything, or identity politics in general. You know, Sonny Hostin, let's not forget, was the person who sat there and held up the sign that read, "Hands up, don't shoot," after one of the police-involved shootings that we had over here a couple years ago, involving a white police officer and a black man in Ferguson, Missouri. Well, that was a lie. That black man did not say, hands up, don't shoot. He was the aggressor, as told to our Department of Justice by 5 black witnesses. Did Sonny Hostin go on the air and say, I got it wrong again because my ideological blindfold is on, as it always is when there's anything touching race? I only take one side because I'm blinded by this ideology. No, she did not. And how about that other reporter you showed from CNN referring to Meghan and Harry and the 2 other royals? Oh, you mean the future king of England? That's how stupid and ignorant the reporters are over here. They only follow the ones who give them the drama they need and say the proper things about the royal family, meaning it has to be horrible, in order for the CNNs of the world to really want to cover them.
No, indeed. Indeed. And obviously, there's a real irony, Megyn, because the US TV networks want to keep on covering this story. They just have to do it in a negative way because, of course, it's great for their ratings. But I think the thing that they're missing when it comes to Queen Elizabeth II, or Queen Elizabeth the Great, as I'm now referring to her, Megyn, is that this was the ultimate feminist. You know, there is so much for the woke, for the left to celebrate about this woman, and they don't seem to want to do it.
And she celebrated both parties. I mean, everyone was praising Elizabeth the Great in the wake of her passing last week, on the right and the left. Show me an American woman who's been in a position of power, a leader, who that's true of. There isn't one. We don't have such a person. That's not really the way our country works. And we've never managed to elevate a woman to a position of power like Queen Elizabeth was in to begin with. So I think it's just power. It's the identity. If Queen Elizabeth had been a black queen, you wouldn't be hearing any of this, right? This is just how people are. And they're too mired in victimhood. I mean, we've had Michelle Obama. She became First Lady of the United States. She went to Princeton undergrad. She went to Harvard Law School. She worked for a very respected law firm in Chicago. She becomes First Lady. Her husband becomes President of the United States. They unveiled her official portrait last week, and his. And she took the moment to point out the people who built this building, in the White House, they never anticipated someone who looked like me would become First Lady. Okay. But you did. And this is the country that made that happen. So maybe now is a time to celebrate the greatness of this country and the fact that we did put you in office and your husband in office for 2 terms in a row. But there is a collection of people, and it's not divided by race. It's not white or black. It's woke and unwoke, and the media is all woke. That sees everything through this identity politics prism. And Queen Elizabeth has the wrong skin color to get their approval. And even if it weren't Queen Elizabeth, because, of course, as you know, she wasn't the one presiding over most of the things they were upset over. She's related. She's connected. She's got crowns that have jewels that if we trace the history back 500 years, we might find a way to be offended, which is their bread and butter business these days.